Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, we have a special guest who's joining us all the way from Colorado. Her name is Stephanie Walter.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And now we found out while we were talking that her husband's from the home state that I'm in. So we had a little bit of connection, and it's always fun to catch up with people from North Dakota. So for anybody else out there that has a connection to North Dakota, they all know it's a small state and we're all related. So we're probably related in a roundabout way. So today, Stephanie, we're going to talk about a number of different things. And it was interesting when we got introduced and talk about some of the things that you believe in. And one of those that you talk about is how we have to re-educate people, not re-educate people in a bad way, but just get them to rethink about, in a book I'm a firm believer in, it's called Become Your Own Banker with R. Nelson Nash. He says you have to rethink your thinking. And I'm a firm believer that we have to get out of this conditioned thinking that we're in. And, today Stephanie's going to talk about, she's the CEO of, is it Erbe Wealth? I have to make sure.
Yeah, Erbe Wealth.
Erbe Wealth. Thank you for the pronunciation. So
Sure.
you're in raising capital raising, syndications, and real estate investments. So you made an interesting point that you sold your insurance agency of 16 years, and now you teach professionals to use those key principles. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
So, and then also it says that you like to be the gateway between these professionals and well-vetted deals. And so I'm actually really interested in that. And what do you consider a well-vetted deal? Well, first off, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So did I miss anything that was in an introduction?
No. The only thing is Erbe. People wonder what that name is. It's actually German, a German word for legacy, a legacy of wealth, and it was sort of a nod to my dad, who was a second generation German immigrant, or son of a first generation immigrant. They were both entrepreneurs, and that's very inspirational to me.
Very much so. German immigrants are all over our state, so I appreciate that. Now, it's funny but I guess we've learned different ways to pronounce it, but it's Erbe, not Erbe.
Uh-huh.
Very nice. So, and it's legacy planning. I mean, that's really what I'm about. It's about what we believe at Sage Wealth. Just to share with you real quick, my founding principles are all about, think long term, God has instilled in our brains all the knowledge we ever need. We just have to get the weeds out of the way to be able to grow that knowledge. Ultimately, for this future generation, right? I want to make what we're learning and what we're doing to help ourselves, but also help the next 10 or 15 or 20 generations to take control of that function in their life, the financing and business side of their life, which is something a lot of families don't talk about. Most families don't talk about, and so I was excited to get with you to talk about this a little bit today. So again, thank you for being on.
Well, thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about. Well, first off, you said you retired and sold your insurance agency. What kind of insurance were you in?
I was in actually property and casualty, and I started that agency in 2005. And so just cars and homes and commercial businesses was sort of my specialty. And
so what made you kind of want to get out of there and kind of pivot a little bit? I think pivoting is probably a good word for it.
Well, I was a captive agent, so that just means to the folks out there, I had one company that I could work with, and that was Farmers Insurance. And I loved working with my clients. They loved me. It was a great business to have, but as I got further and further into it, you realize that really people can love you, but not love what your company's doing. And I didn't have a lot of power to the decisions that farmers would make about different things. And I've always had like a love for real estate. I just never was super educated about it. And in 2006, 2016, I was invited to a boot camp to learn about syndications and investing in commercial real estate. And once I sat through that, I felt like I say the heavens opened and felt like the sun shined on me, and this was it for me. And so everything after 2016 was just kind of preparing myself to move on, and certainly was helped out a lot by raising money and working with some wealthy investors and kind of modeling a lot of what they do in their own finances. I changed the way that I was looking at money and positioning my money, which then allowed me to retire in a pretty short time.
So when you say retire, do you truly mean retire or retool? I'm never a firm believer of retiring. I think sometimes we take a step back and should retool and re-energize ourselves and our passions. But I hope, my belief is that we should never retire until the day we graduate from this earth. That's kind of
correct. Yep, and that's how I feel too. For me, I'm still kind of struggling with that, but I raise money, and I communicate and educate a lot of people into looking at different ways in which they should be looking at money. And I find that to really be my passion right now. And, I raise money. Since I like to raise money, I'm able to now pick out charities and raise money for those different charities. But I don't think I'll ever be able to. I mean, I retire in the sense that I replaced my income with my passive income, but I still work. I think I'll work until I die too.
Well, I think we should. We should always be of value, right? If we retire, it seems like we don't bring value. And I'm always a firm believer that the day I stop bringing value to this world and to my people around me, one of the things you use, which I've heard myself say, and I use it quite a bit, is, I service those people that are open to my message when I want to hear it. I call them my tribe. I see that you kind of use the same language, right? Because there are people that want to hear our message. It may not be for everybody, but those that want to hear it will hear it if they're open to new ideas.
Correct. Yep, I agree.
So the fact that you're using, your tribe, I was like, oh, I love that. I use it myself. So I call them my people or my tribe. So how did you ever come? How do you determine who's your tribe?
I think I've had people explain it to me, but it's just like what I love about what I do now is I get to work with people who like me and who I like. And, and that's been a big, people that are open to the message, like what you're saying. And I know that once they start to change the way that they look at investing and they see how this works, it's really fulfilling to see, like a year in or 2 years in, they're like, okay, I'm ready to start transitioning a lot of my money into cash flowing assets, and that makes me feel pretty fulfilled.
So when you say cash flowing assets, obviously I have a pretty good understanding, or at least I think I have an idea what that means. But what do you see as what you're focusing on as far as cash flowing assets? I mean, what's your niche, for lack of a better word? There's no saying that the riches are in the niches. What would be kind of your niche as far as what do you love to work? What's the space you love to work in?
I love to work in commercial multifamily real estate, and specifically I work in the southeastern United States, even though I live here in Colorado, because my partners that I work with are located in those states. Florida I've done, I think 12 deals, and all but 2 have been in Florida. And so very familiar with that area, know that niche. Multifamily we've seen it through, historically, you can do the research, but we've seen it, right through COVID, how these assets have performed. It's very recession resistant investment that gives you really fantastic tax benefits and cash flow, monthly cash flow, which I was a landlord for many years, and this is a great alternative to that because you get that cash flow, but you don't have the annoying calls in the middle of the night.
And that's the syndication, right? Where
Yeah.
they're in essence buying, investing with you, if that's the right word, or working with you, and then property management. That's all set up. They just get the benefit of the cash flow, and the other side through a proper syndication is the tax benefits that associate with that flows back to the investor as well. Correct.
Correct. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So gotcha. So now, when you say your partners, is that part of your organization, or they would work typically through you? If one of my clients calls up and says, "Hey, I heard you on Wade Borth Podcast. He's my IBC guy, but I have some money to put to work." They would contact you directly. Is that fair to say?
They would contact me directly because I think what's pretty unique about me is I'm able to vet these deals, vetting meaning doing due diligence. I get approached by a lot of people every year to raise money for their deals. Well, I get to pick and choose the very best of these deals, which is why out of these last 12 deals I've done since I started in this industry, every single one has annualized returns of 20% in every single deal that I've been a part of. So I do all the vetting, and then, I contact my group of investors to see if they are interested in the particular investment I have available.
So are there any restrictions as far as who can be working with you? I mean, do we have to have accredited investors typically?
Yeah. Accredited investors, that's it for us. Yeah.
Yep. An accredited investor, maybe just for the listeners, just kind of let them know, or what would you consider an accredited investor? What
is a single person who has an income of $200,000, or a married couple that has an income of $300,000, or barring that, if you don't qualify that way, having a net worth of $1 million will allow you to will allow you to be considered an accredited investor.
And so, and just so people understand, that's nothing that I have anything to do with. That's really rules set up by the SEC, and those are conversations you would have to have with Stephanie. It's not the conversation I have with me, because I'm not going to. I don't. It's not my bailiwick. It's not my niche. My niche is teaching people how to take control of the banking function in their lives, right? So that's what we like to do. But again, there's a lot of similarities. In your bio, it talked about you help professionals unlearn what most of us have been wired to think about money.
Yes.
Can you just talk about that a little bit? Because I do that every day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm pretty personally tied to this, because as much as I wanted to think that I thought outside the box, I really didn't. My goal when I started my business was I was going to buy a rental property every couple years. And then after 30 years, when it was paid off, then I would have my cash flow and I could retire. So what I learned from working with these wealthy investors is there's an actual mindset, a difference between pretty much the wealthy investors and everybody else. The average person like myself views money as accumulating, an accumulation mindset. So whether that's, for me, it was that I was going to buy rental properties and just let the money accumulate in the equity. And even though the equity was making zero for me, that's what I was planning on doing. What the majority of people do is put the money into their 401ks, where they have no control over it. They have nobody has an idea of what the value of that 401k is going to be once they go and take that money out of there, and most importantly is what the taxes are going to be. That's ignoring that they have very little control over that money. In the meantime, there's fees that are attributed to it. Most people, if you ask them what they're invested in, would have no idea what they're invested in. Now that's as opposed to a wealthy person who views money in a utilization. So they believe in having control of their money. And most of the time, that money is invested in businesses. Uh, I've learned a lot that wealthy people tend to vet, do their due diligence on groups of people, team people, people that are in a business, people like myself and a team of syndicators do the due diligence, put their money, invest in that team to make their money work, but their money is working at all times. They know where it's invested, what it's making, and most importantly, that money is having cash flow that's benefiting them right now. Their money is never just sitting out, very rarely sitting outside of their control, and that's a real mindset change, to be looking at your money as working for you right now. And
so I would guess that like me, I've read Robert Kiyosaki's The Cash Flow Quadrant. I mean, that's a lot of what we have to get people out of that mindset of being employee or self-employed and getting over to the right side of the quadrants, which is an investor or having a true business, right? One of the other. So
correct.
You do have cash flow. So with that, again, going back to Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, he talks about a lot about, and Stephanie, just so you know, Nelson was one of my mentors, one of my key influencers about 15 years ago. And he always made a mention, he said, money has to flow to be valuable.
Yes.
And money has to flow to be valuable is foreign to a lot of people. So every day we're having conversations with people to get them to unlearn that, stop thinking like a consumer, right? And when you talk about 401k, that's a consumer mindset in the sense that people were going to accumulate. So at some time down the future, and they have no idea what that time is or what that amount's going to be, that they can consume all those dollars up versus having those dollars work for them and create additional cash flows.
Yeah, I use that word a lot, flowing money, visualizing the flow of money. And the faster you can get the money flowing, the faster that velocity of money is, the faster you'll make money. But it really is a mindset change.
Definitely is. I actually did a podcast. It's called Infinite Banking, the IBC Concept Explained by Nature. And we were talking with my son when now he's probably 10 years old at the time, about, where water has power is when it's flowing. When it sits, it becomes stagnant and it disappears. Mm-hmm. And that's just a great visual for people to kind of take away. And I love that idea because, again, we want to accumulate dollars, but we also at the same time want to find ways to put them to work. Okay, so we accumulate our money so we can put it to work, not so we can hold on to it so strong that it never gets a chance to go to work for us. Getting away from the scarcity mindset and getting into that abundance mindset where we think, if we can put this money to work, man, we can find tremendous ways to have it grow, because that's what we need in our life to buy groceries or to, buy nice things or buy anything, not even nice things anymore. It's like just, buying the staples. You need more and more cash flow.
That's correct. Yeah.
One of the things, through the syndications and doing these deals, what do you see with where interest rates are going, housing prices? I mean, all the things that are going on in the economy. How does that affect your business a little bit? I'm sure you've thought about this and you've studied this and you've had discussion with your peer groups about this whole idea. Is where are we at from an economic standpoint in this country, and with those housing things? I've heard that we're 25 million houses short in this country right now.
Yes.
And I'm just assuming that, again, that would kind of lead me to believe that no matter where interest rates go, we still need to have housing. People still need shelter and still need places to live. But how do you see that, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. I mean, we do I do huge deep dives into every investment I decide to get involved with. And so in particular, you look at the market you're in, what is the population doing? What is the housing shortage look like? haven't heard that stat, but I look more at rental housing, and I know that there's a 5 million shortage of rental houses across America. So I have a lot of people when they're investing in my deals, they're like, well, what about, what if interest rates go up, and things like that? Is there going to be a crash? Yes, I think pretty historically, I mean, we don't know. We're living in really weird times, but historically, how they've handled inflation is to raise the interest rates. Will they do that? I'm not entirely sure, but that doesn't really affect us terribly because our goal, or the goal of to find a deal, to find investors to invest in, is that it's in a great market. We're getting a good deal. We're getting an off-market deal, which means we're making money on the buy. So that's a huge philosophy that I have that some people don't have it. A lot of people are like, well, I'll buy it and we'll make money on appreciation. That just doesn't work for me. I want to have money that we've made on the buy. But yes, I think but will there be a crash? I don't think historically there's ever been a crash in a situation where there's a major demand for a product. And so there's a major demand for housing in the areas in which we're buying. We're seeing rental increases in the double digits. In a market I'm looking at right now, it's 20% rent increases have happened in the last year. Now, is that going to happen forever? Probably not, but in my analysis, I always work out a 3% rent growth as kind of our assumption there. So I think it's a great time. I don't think there's ever been necessarily a bad time to invest in multifamily because of, simply the demand in a lot of markets we're in. We talk to the people that are building the new apartments, and literally with the growth that's projected, they think it might be a decade before they get caught up. So like I said, it's just like it really is supply and demand. Now, if you were thinking of investing in California, I'd say, well, you need to really do some research on what's happening there. But markets where there's migration that's occurring after COVID, where people can live where they want to live and do their jobs remotely. There's been a massive influx into the southeastern United States, especially Florida, where they say 1,000 people are moving there a day. So it's just kind of there'll always be great markets, I think, as long as your philosophy is you want to make money on the buy.
Gotcha. And so, like you said, you live in Colorado, you work in the Southeast. Your clients come from all over the country?
Yes, they do. Yeah. That's the beauty of the Zoom era we live in now.
Yes. I love it. We can reach, and we can, our tribe is a lot bigger than what we think it is when we can reach people through this medium of, go to meeting or Zoom or whatever it is. And people are accepting of that now as a way of communication versus the face-to-face meeting and having to sit beside you in order to be able to do business with you. So that's a great thing. So kind of to wrap this up, I know you mentioned that there's some money myths that we've talked about. We might have touched on them all, but what are those? What are some of those money myths that you like to debunk? Just kind of to wrap it up.
Yeah, no, the one that I think of that we haven't covered is that a lot of people think wealthy people, the reason they got wealthy is because they invested in high risk type of investments, and there's nothing that could be further from the truth. They're very they invest in a lot of different things, but all their things that they invest in are thoroughly vetted. They tend towards things that have cash flow coming in and, are very low risk. And, One
of the wealthiest guys that I've ever associated with, he would always tell me, he says, the way to make wealth is not, to your point, not to take risk, is to avoid losses.
Mm-hmm.
And people that have wealth, and this has been my observation as well, is that, they might be investing in something. And when you and I, or maybe not you and I or, somebody else that's not really been trained might see it as risky, but he knows what he's doing. And, there's a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. And it says, to find yourself and surround yourself with people that know what they're doing, right? Mm-hmm. And so part of that is, that eliminates a lot of the risk. If you can find people you can trust and know that are experts in that marketplace, then you've eliminated, not all risk, but you've eliminated a lot of it. And so they're doing things that we see as risky, but it's not risky to them because they know what they're doing, or at least they're associated with people that know what they're doing.
Correct. Yep.
So
I agree.
Are there any other money myths that we haven't talked about?
Oh gosh. I think we've covered a lot of the ones that I'm thinking of. I think people need to examine the 401k and really look into that in a greater detail of what you're expecting out of that at the end of the day. I think that's been a great, deception for people that are looking to retire and depending on the 401k. And I'm not saying to get out of it altogether. You can roll it into a self-directed IRA where you have some control, but certainly really understand the pros and cons of that 401k when you go to retire.
Yeah, because we have a saying here is that the more control you have, that leads to more freedom. And somebody else that's controlling your money for the next 30 years, if you're in a 401k, doesn't give you a lot of control, which leads to not a lot of freedom. Freedom to make decisions, right? Freedom to free up your time, to grow relationships, and then and to serve that purpose that is your one purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I would agree with you. Again, I've never advocated for people not to put money in their 401k. That's a personal decision you need to make. But I know a lot of my listeners have heard me say this before. Is like, look who's advocating for those things and ask yourself why. And then ask at the end of the day, who's really in control. And if something came up, if a really good deal really came across your plate, do you have access to enough capital to make that happen, to take advantage of these opportunities to grow wealth? Mm-hmm. And does that 401k offer that, or would you be better served holding your money somewhere else so, again, you can take control of the banking function in your life?
Correct. Yep. I agree 100%.
So I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, right?
Yeah. But I guess what's more interesting, I look at I've looked at hundreds of financial statements from very wealthy people, and it's a very tiny little majority that have 401ks. And so that should make people be like, okay, maybe I ought to rethink that.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, look what people of wealth are doing. And then, why do you want to fight that, right? Why swim against the stream? But that's what a lot of people do. And again, a lot of listeners might listen to Dave Ramsey and buy into what he has to say. And for some people, what he has to say is just fine. But for those people that truly want to grow wealth and want to have passive income, look at those that are growing wealth. I mean, the story that Dave tells is for people that make $50,000 or $60,000 in income and have $100,000 in debt. They need his help. The people that are growing wealth and are truly wealthy are not those people. So let's take a look at what those people are doing. Be curious about it and say, well, what are they doing? And can I do the same thing? Stop being jealous, but now be more curious than jealous of people that have wealth and cash flow.
Correct. Yep.
So, I don't mean to pick on Dave. You probably have some listeners.
No. I honestly love Dave. I think he provides a valuable service, but again, it's for a certain type of person, a person that's probably had a bit of some financial issues in their life, and he helps get them back on their feet. But there really should be another step up for the people that kind of already have their financial lives somewhat in order, and maybe a part B of his program. Yeah.
Exactly. So, well, Stephanie, what is your contact information? How do people find you? what's your tribe look like? Maybe describe your tribe a little bit.
Oh, geez. Okay. I have, I would say my average client is probably around 40 to 70 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 50 myself. And just are open to the idea of getting cash flow to help them have this freedom as they get older. And, I work with, kind of the busy professional largely. I do have, the standard wealthy person that wants to invest, who knows the value of this. But I get the most fulfillment out of working with people that are kind of new to this and are very grateful and happy to get into investment where they get that cash flow and those tax savings. Depending on what area of the country they are, sometimes the tax savings are better for them than the cash flow. So but just people that are open to looking at their finances in a different way and are really looking at building their wealth in a I say this is like investing in real estate on steroids. That's what I tell people. And so that would be an ideal person.
And again, so how would they get a hold of you if they want to know more about this, or they want to take advantage of some of the things we talked about or that you've talked about? Because again, you're the expert in it. That's not my bailiwick, but how would they get a hold of you? Throughout some of the information. Again, a lot of this will be listed in the show notes as well. But go ahead and share that with us if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. My website is www.erbewealth.com. And I've got a tremendous amount of information. You can sign up for my weekly newsletter, or sign up to, be notified if we have any new deals that come along. But my website, I've worked pretty hard to make it a place for education. So there's a ton of articles that I've written, as well as you can kind of see a track record of all of my past deals and what the past performance has been on them.
Is there an email address that is tied to that too, or?
Yeah, it's my initials, which is SK as in kite, W as in Walter, at erbewealth.com.
SKW at erbewealth.com.
That's it.
Perfect. Well, Stephanie, I really appreciate you taking the time to visit with me. This is something that's close to my heart because, again, I truly believe we believe in the same thing. I'm working on kind of the front end of it, and then you're working on the implementation of some of these ideas that we talk about as well. So thank you again for taking some time. Really excited about it. As things go along, maybe we'll get together on another podcast just to get a little bit deeper in some of these techniques and these ideas that you're using and how we can marry it together with what we do over here at Sage Wealth and showing people how to take control of the banking function, because we're about taking control of the financing part of it. And then what do you do once you have control of the financing? You have to go put it to work. And so where do we put it to work? That's where you come into play.
Yeah. So. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, you take care and stay safe out there.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.